Hello, everybody. Welcome to Raising Vibrations. Here with Simon today. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the new moon in Libra. And this is for the 28th of September, 2019. So firstly, for those of you that are watching this video and need a little bit of clarification, this is a Western tropical zodiac new moon report. And so we'll be using the natural zodiac, Aries to Pisces, in the form of Western tropical horoscope. Okay, cool. So, wow, this is going to be a pretty intense new moon in my view. I think that looking at the natural way that the energy is leading up to this new moon, and also looking at how this is playing out in people's lives, it feels to me very relevant that we've got a little bit of bumpiness ahead of us at the moment. And hopefully today I can provide some value to you in terms of how to navigate this period, and also to provide probably a sense of comfort towards the way that some of the things are actually going to play out for us. Now, just a quick announcement. If those of you prefer to read new moon reports or full moon reports, myself and Jen actually write articles as well, and we post that to our website, which in the description below is a link to that, and I'll also post the article link in the description as well, so that you can go ahead and read that as well. Okay, all right, so I chose this image for a reason, specifically because I'd like to focus on the two sort of people that are reaching out to each other. Libra as an archetype is mainly about two things. It's the evolutionary impulse to help us meet other people as they are. And it's also the energy to find out what type of people we don't need to integrate with. Okay. So Libra wants to help us integrate with the right people, so that we can experience feelings of integration, acceptance, feelings of being heard, and just kind of being accepted in some sense. But what's also interesting about Libra is that through the discerning process, it shows us what type of people are not necessarily correct for us. And I think that this is a really healthy thing to understand about the lessons of Libra. It's this polarity between what is healthy for us and what is not, and what types of interactions do we have that lead us to understand that about ourselves. Okay, so when you're interacting with another person and you're noticing certain agitations and certain feelings arise that you feel the other person needs to correct about themselves, I invite you to explore what is the root of that in yourself. Okay, and then from there, begin to develop your own sense of, yeah, okay, these are arising. This material is coming to the surface for me, and what is it about this other person that is reminding me of something about me? And I suppose that in some way, the Libra lesson also helps us through the idea of mirroring, that we're able to get a deeper reflection of ourselves. And of course, the opposite side of Libra is Aries, right? So we're learning a lot about ourselves through the other. And of course, this new moon that's happening in Libra, we're going to have the Pluto and Libra generation have a lot of activations come up for them. And I suppose on one level, this is a theme that you've wrestled with for a large majority of your life. And that is, well, I like to interact with others, and I like to kind of feel the experience in the company of other people, and I want to share my experience with other people. But I notice that there are emotional complexes that arise between it. Like sometimes I don't want to actually do that. And now I'm in this relationship, and there are sort of expectations that I feel that I need to meet. And if I don't want to meet them, I have to feel guilty on one level. Another level is feeling actually alone with inside of yourself. This actually goes for anybody that has Pluto in the 7th house, or that has a lot of that you have a lot of planets in your 7th house. You can definitely be experiencing these types of themes in your life. And you are really here to explore what is a healthy balance between your own time and then how you share that with others. So the Pluto and Libras right now, for most of you for the last year and probably continuing until mid-March, April next year, you're going to be feeling the current South and North node transit through Cancer Capricorn, right? So for Pluto and Libras, the Cancer Capricorn nodal axis, which I'll show you in the chart, has been squaring your natal Pluto. So you are all with Pluto and Libra, and then the nodes are squaring your Pluto. So I'm sure many of you are going through deep psychological and emotional changes at the moment. And these changes are, I would say, necessary, because this is the point in your evolutionary progression that whatever changes needed to take place, because this was the reason for your incarnation, is occurring now, okay? And you'll find that you'll be struggling with this sense of, I don't want to do this anymore. And you need this freedom and wanting to kind of break out of these things and step into new realities that are honoring your authenticity a lot more, so that you can be more real, that you're not giving your time to things that don't serve you and that that don't serve you, but you may have run the script that you needed to do this because that was the thing you needed to do, So there's a lot of liberation that's taking place right now in the Pluto and Libra generation. And I'm sure you're all feeling this at the moment, and it's very deep within inside of you. And I do encourage you to keep noticing these shifts and changes and knowing that you're on the right path with that, okay? So coming back to my picture over here, in terms of the two people that are reaching out their hands, Libra in classic astrology, has to do with diplomacy, being able to find how we can meet the needs of the other and how we can meet the needs of ourselves. And this is another thread that the Pluto and Libras are learning to experience in their life, is how do I know how to meet my own needs, and do I really want to meet the other person's needs? And maybe that's a bit too confusing. So what is it that I'm supposed to do? Like, I'm confused in relationships. And really you're learning how to reclaim the ability to meet your own needs first, so that when you do enter relationships and you're able to meet the other, you're meeting it as your own, that you can meet your needs, and so that you're not expecting the other person to meet the needs. So that's creating a kind of codependency dynamic, and it's also leading to needing to control the other so that your own unresolved emotions don't come to the surface, which is a very big part about what this new moon in Libra is about. So I think that on a collective level, so my point here is I want to speak about how this new moon is going to be moving through us and how we can best navigate this territory at the moment, okay? And as I said, within our psyche, within our representation of our own inner world and the things that influence and shape our perception of reality, there are archetypes. And within these archetypes, we have conditioned personalities, okay? We've internalized specific role, like people in our lives. Our mother and father will have very deep imprinting into the way that we see the polarities in relationships, right? So the way that our father treated us can deeply influence the way that we see, if you're a female, for instance, see other men. And the way that our mothers, imprinted on us as men can influence how you perceive women, okay? This is something got to do with the anima-animus dynamic within Jung's work. And there are these deep impressions that are left in our sense of identity, our sense of perception of the world. And most of this is very unconscious, and it floods through into our ego. It floods through into the way that we perceive the world. And a lot of that becomes a way in which we place these perceptions on other people. And a lot of the time, these inward reflections or these inward impressions can confuse what's real in what's happening there, right? We can have personal biases towards it. So as an example, when we're trying to meet another person, the likelihood of us actually seeing them for who they are can be influenced by the shadow that we bring within our relationships. We can bring forth an unresolved trauma that plays out in our life, and we can hold the other person as the representation of that trauma, but it's not really them that's actually in that state. It's your own inner psychological relationship to that image. And this is very deep that I'm bringing to you. And again, I'm not really asking anybody to kind of follow me here. I'm just really trying to put out here that, you know, when we are navigating this kind of Libra new moon at the moment, and I'll go over to the chart to show everybody, it's very, very important to note that our psychological relationship to life is influenced by deeper unconscious forces. And this new moon is going to bring those things to the surface, and what seemingly could be a normal interaction between another person could actually turn out to be very emotionally charged. And I think there's going to be a lot of emotionally charged interactions right now, a lot of provocation, a lot of struggle that might come to the surface. And I wouldn't be surprised if certain people have experiences where that kind of disillusionment takes place. So there's a lot of things, that's my point here, there's a lot of things that rise to the surface in the way that we meet other people that are really a reflection of our own inner space within ourselves. So if I point out to specific planetary energies over here, I'll show you. Right, so here you have Chiron in Aries at 3 degrees, and it's in opposition to the sun and the moon. They are sitting at 5 degrees Libra. And then you can also see that this 5 degrees sun and moon in Libra is squaring the nodes. In fact, you've got this whole entire stellium of Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Moon squaring the north node. Okay. And then you've also got things like the sun and the moon in conjuncting at 5 degrees, they're in conjuncting Uranus in Taurus. Okay. And then you've got Neptune in Pisces also making that in conjunct all the way to the sun and the moon over there, and also Neptune, Venus. And if you can see, Venus is also here making squares to the south node, to Saturn, and to Pluto. And then you have Jupiter squaring Mars. Mars is in opposition to Neptune. Jupiter is squaring Neptune. So there is a lot of tension in this chart. There's a lot of energy that's going to come from different places that we might not see, and they're going to create a lot of evolutionary shifts within ourselves. Now, for those of you that are not really that are new to astrology, don't worry, I'm going to help us digest this. But for those of you that can follow, these angles that the sun and moon is making to Capricorn and Saturn and Pluto and all of these symbols here, what they're actually representing to us, okay, are collective shifts. And these collective shifts are forcing us to see the shadow within inside of ourselves. And when we see the shadow within inside of ourselves, we're able to actually integrate the thing that sort of like the old wounds that we have, or the things that polarize us, or the things that separate us from feeling balanced and integrated, right, and holistic. Right, that's a big key that's going to come out of this. What I also see very deeply is that Chiron's transit through Aries, and I speak about this quite a lot, Chiron's transit through Aries is helping us integrate what Uranus did since 2012. So Uranus has gone through Aries, okay, and now it's in Taurus, and now Chiron's there. And what's showing up for me, what I'm observing, and how this is working is that as Uranus came in here, it kind of like brought us to a state of, okay, we're all kind of very focused on ourselves. Everybody has a mobile telephone. Everybody has their own inner space where they've got their own news feed set up on their Facebook as an example. And you've got your own Instagram, and you like the things you like, and you don't like those things, and you're interested in that, and you're not interested in that. And a lot of self-discovery, a lot of social movements began with Uranus and Aries, right? And now what's happening is that as Chiron moves through Aries very slowly, because of course it's only at 3 degrees, it's kind of showing us, right, that this progressive change that's taken place in our life, this new psychological orientation that we all have individually to the way that we perceive our world, and this desire for freedom and fairness, it's actually revealing to us that there are two sides that we're really choosing. We have this, like, there's a polarity that's occurring deeply within the collective at the moment, because you can value one thing, and somebody that you you like as an example, that you follow or you are friends with, says something that contradicts what you feel is right, and then all of a sudden there's an emotional material that comes to the surface, and there's kind of like a polarization. And the polarization I see is ideals. Like, we're all kind of on some level, through our own specific unique lens, limited. And so because of that, we're almost in a way possessed by our truth. And because we're possessed by our truth, we're not seeing what is actually there. We're seeing what our truth is seeing. And because of that, and because anything that comes outside of that truth that doesn't validate our truth, then becomes all of a sudden something that we don't like. And then that kind of polarizes us. And polarization is an Aries archetype, it's a Cancer archetype, it's a Capricorn archetype, and it's fundamentally a Libra archetype, because it's two sides. That's why I chose this image. It's two sides, and two people are arguing their case, but nobody's actually seeing what's really there. And I'm not saying that every person experiences this, but I definitely, you just need to go onto Facebook and just watch one person say something, and then all of a sudden, if it's like emotionally charged, there's just people attacking each other. And if you really analyze the contents, it's like this person says that, that person says that, and because their beliefs and the road that they came to understand what they believe to be true is different from the other person, then it becomes, well, my truth's better than yours. And so what's hilarious about this, in my view, and this is where the truth is that because we have this kind of deeper unconscious impression that's influencing the way that we perceive reality, and our biases sitting behind the scenes, the kind of perspectives that we hold on a surface level, in other words, something that's more, that you're more awake to, like, oh, I believe in that. Because we hold that truth, what's occurring is that we're kind of doing the same thing that religion does, is that it looks at another party that is outside the boundaries of what is comfortable or true for this person's religion, and then saying, well, your religion's different to mine, I don't like that, and so therefore I need to prove my truth. And I think that what's really dangerous about this is that we're almost, in some sense, victimized by our own unconscious blindness. Okay, and I feel like something that's really, really truthful is if we observed within ourselves the root of why we believe the thing we believe, and we ask ourselves the question, what is it about the other person that could be potentially irritating me that is revealing something about myself? And then the next thread after that is, okay, if say this experience is manifesting it for myself, isn't the Aquarius age, or the progression into the Aquarius age that has to do with community and resonance, actually trying to share with us and show with us that, okay, so there's a differentiation. And so in this differentiation, that person's not right, that person's not wrong, because there's no judgment anymore. It's simply, we don't see the same thing. We're not looking at the same thing from the same perspective. And because we're not looking for the same perspective in that way, then I have mine, you have yours, and that's it. And you kind of move on. And what you do is you align with the people that have the similar truth to yourself. And even then that's dangerous, because once you're aligned to that person and then they say something, or something happens that challenges your own inner psychological value, and then that comes to the surface. And if that's emotionally charged, then that becomes projected. And then that projection becomes the basis for the separation. And that's what's actually occurring. That's what I see the danger in this new moon, is if we're not awake or aware to our own subconscious projections of what we perceive or want to believe to be the truth, then what we're going to do, especially during this new moon, is get into these type of emotional conflicts where all they're going to do is just bring more destruction. So that's my kind of sense right now of something that I feel is really important. Jeffrey Wolf Green, when he was teaching Pluto, he talked in relationships. When he was talking about Pluto and evolutionary astrology through relationships, he came up with a formula that I found really fascinating, and I actually created a whole entire course on it, which is called the Essential Needs. And the idea was that when we take the archetype of Pisces, which is the sort of unknown, the unconscious, and we take the archetype of Taurus, which is our individual dialogue to ourselves and our individual needs, and we look at their relationship to the sign of Libra, they actually make these inconjuncts. Look there. It's a 150 degree angle, like geometrically, right? 150 degree angle between Pisces in the 7th house and the 2nd house in the 7th house. And that actual three sign symbolism of Pisces, Taurus, and Libra, it's what he was trying to show us is that, the honeymoon period in a relationship. Well, that would be the Neptune place and the Libra place. So what we do is we project our ideals. Okay, so this is the Neptune. So I'm going to break this down for us. Like, why is there a projection field? This ideal utopian perception gets projected into the relationship as, this is the person, I'm so in love, etc. It's a honeymoon period. And we're in a sense kind of deeply consumed by the possession of love in the way that everything is harmonic and beautiful and divine. Okay? And then what happens is that over a period of time, the relationship and that honeymoon period starts to die out and we become a little bit more sort of balanced and normal. And in that place, some of the little shadow aspects start to creep into the surface of our psyche. And so what really begins to happen is that the relationship starts to mirror or trigger certain unconscious material that then if we perceive the other person as the thing that's doing it to us, we're actually telling the person unconsciously that it's your responsibility to deal with my stuff, right? And every single one of us, including me, at some point has got into a conflict where what really triggered us was our own unmet need that we couldn't articulate in the moment, that we asked the other person to hold subconsciously. And so the way that we did that was a judgment, right? And so we go around pointing fingers and judging other people for their actions and their beliefs and their truths, and we're not actually looking at our own raw data, our own unresolved process and material, and we all carry this. And that's why I think this new moon is such a profound new moon as well, because it's not for the faint-hearted. In my opinion, I don't think that this new moon energy is for the faint-hearted. Venus is squaring Pluto, it's been squaring the nodal axis as well. So there's a lot of deep unresolved stuff that's going to come to the surface for us. And the likelihood of us placing it in other people, because that's where it's safer to experience, because it's a lot easier to blame somebody than to tend to be responsible for it within ourselves, right? And it's not a straightforward thing. It's very complex. Sometimes you just have a really, really deep unconscious trauma and you don't know about it, and so you're gonna project it out there. And sometimes we can't even face those traumas, and so that defense mechanism will always run our life for us. That's what Jung meant when he talked about that if you don't make the unconscious conscious, you're basically going to essentially see your life as being a direction of fate. And really it's the unconscious that's wanting to come into our awareness so that we can reintegrate it. And that's what I see also as the potential in this new moon, is the triggering off of where the demons or the phantoms of our own psychological narratives, the storylines that we've told ourselves that we believe to be true, they run the script. And until we actually confront the root of that, they're going to just run our life, and we're going to see it as the truth. And we'll never know that that's the projection. And then that polarization just separates us from the feeling of integration and what's the word, truth and reconciliation. And it's difficult. It's difficult. I don't think anybody wants to just like happily go, oh, look, here's something that I have to own about myself, because it means taking responsibility for your life. And that's the Pluto Saturn South Node in Capricorn, right? We're all looking at the outside world and telling everybody to look out, to be responsible. But sometimes we don't actually recognize that we're doing that. We're like, oh, you be responsible. Okay, fantastic. We've become sort of like a little bit of gurus in some way of holding other people responsible for things. And if we see that they're not responsible for things, then we get upset with them, And it's an ideal based thing. It's Neptune in Pisces. I don't even think it's something that we can control. It's like what to do, and maybe the thing that we can do, and that's what I was trying to say in the Saturn video, was that right now, I think it's really essential to try and reclaim the thing that we've come into this incarnation with, and that's to recognize what shadow parts of ourselves need to be integrated, what parts of ourselves have been dismembered, as it were, right? So that we can remember things that have been broken, or that have been, through events. Like if you've had an abandonment trauma, as an example, like I'm putting up my hand over here, right? If you have a huge abandonment trauma and all of a sudden you're in a situation where that trauma gets triggered, the likely thing that you're going to do is blame the person that abandoned you, versus realize what's inside of yourself, the sensitivity to being abandoned, in that sense. And if we pull our attention back to ourselves, we can reclaim our power. And I think that this is the key here. The latter stages of Pluto transit through Capricorn is the realization of self-mastery. And self-mastery comes through the processing of unresolved emotional complexes. And that's why I think evolutionary astrology is such a profound tool at the moment, because it can really look straight at the core of what it is that potentially has sort of affected you and how you've been shaped. And then through that lens, you can reclaim those things by working on and reclaiming, like I said, the space that's been displaced. So the more we reclaim what has been displaced in ourselves, the more value and nourishment we could actually offer the other. So relationships become more about how can I come into a relationship, or how can I meet the other and add to their life, not what am I going to get from this. It's a really, really interesting sort of psychological twist that you can put onto the situation, in terms of what is the value that I can give versus what it is that I can get from it. And I wonder if we progressively just integrated that very simple and yet profound truth, that over time we could actually find ourselves, being a lot nicer to each other. And that in of itself is a hugely complex thing. It's like when we are not triggered, and when we're in a sort of emotionally balanced state, and the vagus nerve is sort of operating, and we're feeling in our heart chakra, the likelihood of being nice to another person is good. But the moment that they step on our toe, or poke the bear, as it were, then something else comes outside. And, I've spoken to a friend who goes through that. And I'm sure all of us at some level, on some way, has had that experience happen, where seemingly, the interesting thing about it is that the way that we meet the other through our relationship, through this new moon, it really does, it's always a reflection of ourselves. And sometimes we can be in a situation that's very abusive, and that situation can really be telling us that we need to see why we're not valuing ourselves. And in that sense, the relationship, even though it's abusive, is reflecting back your own inner need to see that this is not choices that you should be making going into relationships, because these are red flags, as an example, and this is not healthy for you. And so is it far easier to blame the other person? And again, the blame is it's not like a negative thing. It's not like, oh, it's more along the lines of saying it's a lot easier to hold the other person's actions at fault than to realize that whatever it is that's triggering us is actually pushing us to find what's more truthful for us. And that's my kind of message with today, with this conversation, and I don't know, contemplate it, like really, really chew on it. And I know that it's very confrontational and sort of like getting straight to the core, and not putting on some sort of nice, fluffy, new age type of, things around this. But the message to me seems like it's straight to the point, And when I say straight to the point, I mean straight to the heart of what is necessary for us to find more value in our lives. And in that sense, it's the route to reclaiming what it is that we have, in a way, kind of lost within ourselves. And again, whatever that is, so that when we are interacting with other people, we can see that, okay, you know, that person's actually in their own darkness at the moment. And the likelihood of them probably reacting to me is because in them, whatever it is that they're interacting with, this is like nonviolent communication, right? You can see that another person's need was not met. And if they haven't been able to have the opportunity to develop the emotional literacy to say, my need is not being met here, and so this is what's come up for me, which is a very difficult thing, you know? So I highly encourage those of you that find interest or in the work of Dr. Marshall with nonviolent communication. It can be a very profound tool in being able to come back to this thing that is within yourself. And I think that's what is a beautiful sense of communication with the Libra energy at the moment, you know, is what we can do for ourselves that can make our lives better and then contribute to the overall kind of material plane that we're all embodying at this stage, because everybody on some level has had their tolerance level hit through the roof. We're all sharing this kind of collective pot of chaos and destruction taking place. And I think that, you know, that we're all kind of trying to keep it together. And this energy over here, I don't think is going to be friendly towards that. It's going to poke holes at all of the facades, all of the things that protect you from dealing with the more shadow or darker sides of ourselves. And watch it, just watch it. Watch how people are going to react a lot more, and just watch yourself and just observe, you know, just notice how you can get provoked, and then what does that spirit bring in you, okay? All right, my friends, thanks very much for listening to me babble today. I really hope that you got something out of this. I wanted to let you know that if you like reading, the article is posted in the description below as well. And I want to draw your attention to Raising Vibrations' Patreon. In the description is a link. That's where you can find us. We've got loads and loads of cool things on our Patreon page. And if you like our content, if you like our work, then you know, we're always appreciative of your support. And we like to give a lot back on our Patreon as well. So if that's something that you feel called towards, we're on the internet. You can find us at raisingvibrations.com. All the links and descriptions to our places are in our YouTube channel over here, okay? All right, my friends, thanks very much for listening to me. Have a good new moon, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.